As the respiratory season ramps up, hospitals are being asked to take extra steps to screen patients for avian influenza. The enhanced surveillance has taken on a new urgency with the confirmation of Canada's first domestically acquired case of avian influenza in a British Columbia teenager. Avian flu typically spreads between wild and domestic birds, but can spread to other animals and people. There have now been more than 40 confirmed human cases in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, most of which have been found in California and are linked to dairy cows. I'm now joined by Dr. Abhishek Raut, Medical Director at Appletree Medical Group, to discuss avian flu and the severity of the illness. Dr. Raut, thanks for joining me today.
Good to be here.
Now, there is still a question mark with how the teenager in BC transmitted avian flu, but I want to go back a little more and understand where this illness began and why there's a sudden outbreak on some poultry farms in Canada.
Right. So typically we will see natural reservoirs with wild aquatic birds, particularly waterfowl like ducks, geese, and swans. What these birds would do is they follow their migratory patterns and sometimes can come into contact with domestic birds, either directly or indirectly. And then this can really occur through contaminated water sources, feed, or even feces of wild birds. Once you have that in a domestic population, for instance, a poultry farm, all of these other factors come into play to make the issue much worse. One is a high density of birds. So poultry farms can house thousands of birds in close quarters. So we're talking about a wild spread there. We also have human activity and biosecurity. So this movement of poultry equipment and personnel between farms can help spread that virus even further. Then we do have environmental factors, so conditions that will change and then certainly enhance the survival and transmission of the virus. For instance, viruses like this can survive longer in cold, moist conditions, which we're seeing more and more of. And then certainly seasonal patterns. We do see that, especially in the colder months, we see the seasonal pattern very similar to human influenza as well.
Now, as I mentioned, there has only been one confirmed case in Canada, so it's nothing too serious here yet. But what are signs or symptoms of avian flu that people should look out for? And does it differentiate from swine flu or even COVID-19?
That's right. So we're crossing our fingers that it doesn't get more severe or serious. But what we see typically with avian flu is fever, cough, sore throat, fatigue, muscle aches, and then you can certainly have stuffy nose, diarrhea, and vomiting. What we see with swine flu are fever, cough, sore throat, muscle aches, chills, fatigue, diarrhea, vomiting, and stuffy nose. What we see with COVID-19, fever, cough, fatigue, sore throat, stuffy nose. So essentially, it's very difficult to differentiate between those unless you are doing specific testing for them as well. There's some small differences, of course, with transmission. Avian flu is transmitted primarily through contact with infected birds and secretions. We also see that avian flu can be much more severe and have a higher mortality rate. But because it's less easily spread between humans compared to COVID-19, we do hope that this won't get more serious.
Now, with avian flu being more severe, I'm curious, is there a vaccine for this flu? And is Health Canada pushing for people to begin taking it to prevent the potential spreading ahead of flu season?
It's an interesting question. So there is a vaccine available for avian flu, specifically H5N1. It is not available for commercial use. So mostly governments will have stockpiles of it. So Health Canada has authorized three influenza vaccines that could be used if it became a pandemic. Currently, the plan is to just hold on yet, not even stockpile because the shelf life is quite small. It's actually only 2 years. So instead, you establish contracts with companies like GSK. And then if you see this resurgence or a pandemic type environment, then you can certainly move on to production and moving it to the general public as soon as possible.
Now, I know the focus for this segment has been avian flu, but I want to discuss more generally how important it is to be washing your hands and protecting your immune system during the flu season. How much can good hygiene and just overall precaution help protect someone from the flu?
Right. So I think maintaining good hygiene is crucial, especially during the flu season. Hand washing is still the most effective way to prevent spread of illness, and that's why it's important. It removes germs and it prevents the overall spread. It also reduces illness in general. So the number of people who can get sick with diarrhea and respiratory illnesses can decrease quite a bit. Now, having said all of that, what we do know 58% of women and 48% of men wash their hands after using the bathroom. Of those, 33% of women and only 8% of men used soap. So what we're seeing is in the general population, if you really average it out, maybe about 5% of the general population will wash their hands long enough to really destroy infectious germs using the bathroom. So certainly, even right now, hand washing is still the number one most effective way to prevent spread of illness.
Dr. Raut, thank you so much for the time today.
Okay. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.